Fingers crossed this is going on the correct channel, because last week, before you jumped in, Trups, for like 2 minutes, I was doing this stream on the wrong channel. So if I'm on the right channel...
You have a friend.
I have a friend. And we're live. Yes. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the 4th political recap. This is, yeah, we're exciting. As in the previous 3, Parliament is still in recess. So we have no banter. Although, we might touch on Jeremy Corbyn, actually, because it has occurred to me something did happen this week. And I haven't got any articles for it, but I might go digging for one. So joining me for this, and he will continue to do so until Parliament's back, and then I'll discard him like gone off food, is TrupsLP. Say hello, TrupsLP.
Hello, everyone. Apparently, I have to actually change my name to that TrupsLP now.
It's just Trups, fuck it. How you been anyway this week?
Oh, work has been killing me slowly.
He's a gigolo, everyone.
I'm happy to...
He's a gigolo.
Oh. Yeah, me and Irate Bear both.
Barebacking it across America.
But at least I can say that I'm doing more things at work, so it's not just one project I'm working on. But
that's good, because it gets stale, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. I do software, so...
That's all he can say and disclose at this time. Oh, if only that wasn't true. Anyway, I figured I'd let you go first with this. Okay, so the first thing we're going to talk about is an ex-CIA director called John Brennan. Now, I knew about him because I'd heard there were threats that he was an ex-director and that people were going to remove his security clearance. And the first thought that came to my mind was, how does this guy still have his security clearance in the first place if he's ex?
That's actually a very good point, and a lot of it, they allow him to maintain security clearances so that if they need to train an incumbent or they need to train up somebody who needs more experience, let's say something happens to whoever the seating person is, they need somebody with the experience who can then train them. Usually they leave on good terms, at least for as long as we know.
Sorry, I didn't hear you properly. You just veer off on intent. I missed the last sentence because I was getting a link. Sorry. There we go.
No, just basically they're supposed to help and train others that come by. They're supposed to give experience.
They are the senpai, the mentor, well, they're a glorified tutor at that point. Then.
Pretty much, yeah.
I don't see how this person should retain his clearance. He should just be given a visitor's pass, and that should be it.
Unfortunately, it doesn't work like that.
I will pull up an article because we've got fake news. We're going to go with fake news first. The CNN article. Would you like to read some of it, Trups?
Oh, I'd love to.
And yes, he has the articles as well because I can't be bothered to. I'm lazy. Okay, it's my day off.
All right, so President Donald Trump announced Wednesday he has revoked former CIA Director John Brennan's security clearance, making an unprecedented use of a president's authority over the classification system to strike back at one of his most prominent critics.
Okay, right. So, is this a use or abuse of presidential authority, considering the guy is ex and also does take shots? Well, actually, no. Before we even answer those questions. Brennan is a critic of Donald Trump. Do you know and can you remember any of the things he has said that have would have irked President Trump?
Well, I was trying to pull up some of that.
Okay.
One of the things that he said was in a New York Times op-ed. He said Mr. Trump's claims of no collusion are, in a word, hogwash.
Collusion.
Another thing that he said is makes one wonder what Mr. Trump privately encouraged his advisors to do and what they actually did to win the election.
There's still aren't there still trials going, and we will get to one later referencing somebody involved in the Trump campaign. But there's still this crap going on about collusion with Russia. How is this still going on? So long. It's taken so long. I can't understand.
Since he got elected.
Hello.
It's been going on since he was elected.
This is why I think it's baffling and expensive. You're conducting these investigations to prove something, but you've taken this long, and we still don't have an answer? At that point, you're no better than a gender studies PhD candidate, who may as well just be delaying their supposed oppressive documentation, thesis, dissertation, whatever they bloody well call it. It just seems pointless at that time, to continue this charade. Why not just now give us the answer, because you've dawdled too long? In fact, I'd argue at this point it's no longer relevant. The guy's been there 2 years. If you had something definitive, you would have put him on blast by now.
Honestly, it kind of makes me feel like I'm watching a more intense version of the Dankula trial. Like they're trying to find something over the course of 2 years. They're trying to up the ante over and over again.
Well, actually,
and still don't have
I would say it's reminiscent more of the Honey Badger one, because that one has, and it sorry, excuse me, their verdict has finally come out, but the judge treated it so badly. And that reminds me a lot of these sort of cases where they're just not handling it well. So I'd argue it's more like Honey Badgers. And I feel bad for them, because I was a big fan of them back when the Calgary Expo crap happened. And I felt so bad for them when it happened.
I don't quite recall. I've watched a couple of their things, but I was never like a devout follower.
Oh, fair enough. Then the Dankula one makes more sense then.
Right, okay. For me.
Okay, so with now the question I originally was going to ask, is this an abuse of power, presidential authority, or is it unprecedented use of presidential authority? Like, is it reasonable for him to do it?
You could argue that it is both.
Right.
It has been done a different way in the past, which makes a lot of people skeptical.
That's actually a question I had.
Yeah, go ahead.
Has somebody else in the past done something similar to this?
Yes. Usually it has to go through an investigation by whomever handles such higher clearances. I'm not quite sure who that would be, because I doubt it would be the FBI or CIA investigating themselves.
They couldn't be trusted to. It would have to be an independent body, wouldn't it?
It would probably be DHS, Department of Homeland Security.
That would make more sense.
But if you think about it, the Department of Homeland Security, the head of that is appointed by Trump and can be fired under Article...
I might argue that because of Trump's disdain for, what's his name, Brennan, I might recommend that it not be the president that appoints someone, but somebody... I would maybe not neutral, but somebody that doesn't hold that level of bias.
Well, you could do that, but then you would have to say that it would be, if it were illegal per se, and you were going to charge him with something, then you'd have to take it to a Supreme Court or
right.
Or,
well, to give it a bit of context, in the UK, we what we do, because we're very good at this. Whenever somebody fucks up on a colossal scale, what we do, right, and this is something you couldn't make this shit up. And you can trust in our system that you'll get the right result. We just let them investigate themselves, because that is totally legitimate.
Oh yeah, brilliant plan. No wonder everything's gone to shit.
Honestly, I've got Hannibal in my head saying I love it when a plan comes together. And he's holding a big sign that says BBC loves everyone. Especially honestly, Jimmy Savile.
Based on the criteria for holding a clearance, you would have to really... I would say that a lot of employees honestly shouldn't have their clearances anyway. Now there is a amount of time that you can retain a clearance.
Well, like a cooling off period, perhaps.
Yeah, or if you're like a lower tiered person, you can actually get specific jobs for cleared employees.
Yeah, so
it makes hiring much easier.
Yeah, I mean, I can understand why Brennan held his after. With context, there is some sense to it. You're retired, but you are still of use to them. Maybe reduce the clearance level, perhaps. You know, to
See, that's what I was thinking.
instead of revoking it entirely. But that's from fake news site. It doesn't. Although I would argue unprecedented use of president's authority, that is fake news. And you've stated it yourself. I would say that a reduction is more reasonable. And I don't know if that's what's happened or whether it is an absolute revoking of credentials. Or is it clearance, not credentials?
It's clearance for us.
Right.
Though it is interesting though. He goes on to like, one of the biggest criticisms was that John Brennan is prone to emotional outbursts on the internet, and he's occasionally been a panelist on CNN or MSNBC when they have to ask about certain things. But this then asks the question: can you trust somebody who has a constant link to the media with a high level of security clearance to not use that as leverage?
Actually, you just... Oh, I may have hit my mic then. It does say in the next paragraph, Mr. Brennan's lying and recent conduct characterized by increasingly frenzied commentaries wholly inconsistent with access to the nation's most closely held secrets.
Especially as the former director of the CIA.
That's the implication by the press secretary.
And I tend to agree.
Let's see, there is a tweet here from Brennan. This action is part of a broader effort by Mr. Trump to suppress freedom of speech and punish critics. It should gravely worry all Americans, including intelligence professionals, about the cost of speaking out. My principles are worth far more than clearances. I will not relent. I personally think nothing, because I don't give a fuck about him. I think your job is done. You can keep on being a little bitch, but if you continue to be a little bitch, you only make Trump look right. If that makes sense.
Now, a lot of these people, they think that because they have these accesses to secrets and like a media entity in their pocket, that they hold something over the government. No one could touch them, that kind of thing. Now I'm strawmanning a little bit on this, but it's how they act that kind of makes me think this. But should they speak out or say any of the things, that's illegal.
Right.
Like, it's very, very illegal.
Well, aren't they meant to sign some kind of almost like non-disclosures NDAs?
Kind of.
Yeah, I would have thought you, even as a government official, you'd have to sign something pretty extreme to not leak valuable information, especially if you're the former director of the CIA? Yeah, sorry.
Well, you're liable for treason. You're liable for perjury of the document.
What's the sentence for treason in your country?
According to the Constitution, death.
Oh, right. Brennan, mate. It's time to stop. Although, I would say, he is well within his rights, and I want to be clear, he is well within his right to act like a little bitch on social media, to go on TV if he has to make his points. Of course he is. That is well within his rights. But unless obviously this probably will, and there are two options here. Either he does fuck up, or the White House gives him evidence that he has in fact, like there's written here, the White House has provided no evidence that Brennan has misused his security clearance since leaving government. I would argue if he'd they've probably got no evidence either that he'd leaked stuff, because it's either a security measure or they're trying to maybe be a dick to him.
Your conduct is very well related to whether you can hold a clearance or not.
Oh, really?
I know that Oh, absolutely. I know that if you were to, there are certain red flags that if you trigger enough of them, you can be investigated simply for, suspicion.
Right.
Because these are at this level national secrets. Like, it could be people's lives out in the field, it could be plans, it could be names. Like, I couldn't even say for certain what he knows.
Okay. Well, okay, before we continue then, there's a little bit here. Trump has said in a statement that he is still considering revoking clearances of several others. So you've got the former director of national intelligence, James Clapper. Is he pro or against Trump?
Yes.
Against. Okay, former FBI Director James Comey.
Definitely against.
Yeah, definitely. You're a bit quiet.
Oh, I'm sorry about that.
That's okay. Former CIA Director and National Security Agency Chief Michael Hayden.
I'm not quite sure about him, honestly. I didn't think that he had too much of an issue.
Okay, former Deputy Attorney General Sally Yates. Sorry, I've heard that name.
I've heard it before, and I think it was negative, but I'm not quite sure.
Okay, former National Security Advisor Susan Rice. I've definitely heard her name before.
Definitely against.
Yeah, former Deputy FBI Director Andrew McCabe.
Definitely against.
Okay, former FBI officials.
I'm reading the rest of them, and they're all
against.
All...
So to any outsider without further information, it does look like a hit by Trump to just get rid of people who oppose him. You do see that. That's how a lot of people are going. Normies are just going to see that.
Well, unless they're likening it to Nixon's enemy list.
I'm not familiar with that, but we will get to that in a second. Just tell me in a second. To normies this would look like a hit list, but others might. I certainly for a second thought it might be more that he is trying to, I don't know, treat this a different way. Like instead, when people leave, that's it. You're done. Go. No ties, no nothing. You're gone. Maybe introduce a new, I don't know if legislation exists to change protocol. I don't know.
I'm thinking it's more like damage control.
Damage control?
Well, a lot of them don't like him, and he's made decisions that have definitely gone against the norm of how a lot of these agencies are run, and he's definitely made waves within them. So I could see why some may have personal, if not professional vendettas against him. So damage control could be one way that they want to say it.
Okay, so before you go to tell me about this Nixon list, Dibula says perhaps an enemy list, but is he wrong that these people were actively trying to disrupt his administration?
Oh, without a doubt, they are.
Okay.
But they're technically allowed to do so.
Okay, so, and for the chat, this is also for all of you. If you believe Trump has done a good job, and therefore these people continually make it difficult for him to continue to make positive inroads in his administration, and therefore it's a good thing that he's considering revoking it and also doing a good thing at the same time. Like, if it's two questions: is he doing a good job? Is he right to consider revoking their clearance? If it is, press 1. And that's to you as well, Trups. Do you think he's doing good and that these people are not helping? But before you answer that, it's not a bad thing that they're not helping, because that is good, keeps him on his toes, if that makes sense.
I would say still 1, yeah. I think he's doing what needs to be done.
It does look to others, and this is how the media some members of the media would portray it. While the chat agree and say 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, others would say it looks like an authoritarian thing to do to silence critics.
You're not necessarily silencing them; you're just limiting their access. I know,
but that's how people will use their privileged position to then use that particular language to make it look like that. You know that we know this from years of being on the internet. We know how the media operate. They're not for 3. Fucking hell.
But you gotta
okay, hang on. Keyword they're skipping over is former. He's no longer DCI. He doesn't need clearance anymore.
Right, but the reason why is because they have often called back former
I think they should
people with high level clearance.
Okay, so I personally think that either they do the reduced clearance like I suggested, and obviously something you had considered, or they, with the guest pass, have a certain clearance attached to that for a short period of time.
Yeah, I could see that. Or put it on a temporary leave, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
Like when they need you, they'll call you back and reinstate you, but otherwise...
Okay. Oh, there's another little quote here from, I believe, is Sanders the press secretary?
Yep.
Right, so the president has a constitutional responsibility to protect classified information, and who has access to it, and that's what he's doing that's what he's doing is fulfilling that responsibility in this action. Is fulfilling, fuck's sake. Learn to speak, woman. Or learn to write CNN politics.
Well, I think they're just quoting Sanders, who it's much easier to hear something said if it's written wrong.
Could have been a southern drawl, you never know.
She does seem a little southern.
I'll take your word for it. I actually was just guessing. I have no idea where she's from. Exterminatus, yes, Saki, I totally agree with you. What's this here?
See, now, this line here that says, such access is particularly inappropriate when such officials have transitioned into highly partisan positions and seek to use real or perceived access to sensitive information to validate their political attacks.
Yep.
Honestly, I think that is probably the most clear-cut opinion on why Trump has done it, and I have to totally agree with that.
Okay.
So I think, honestly, the people who are cherry-picking this story and trying to pull out that he is doing something he's doing the right thing. Sorry, I was just reading Dibula's comment and
I see the comments. Lost. Yeah, Dibula's animated. There was a separate article I was considering. It was this one by the you got a little video from it's from the Independent. It has a video here where it says here, Mr. Trump had welcomed the dismissal of McCabe as a great day for democracy. I don't know anything about McCabe, or is it McCabe? I don't know anything about him. But it says here, the article, the first sentence of it indicates that, like a reasoning for revoking it was because of the CIA chief's partial responsibility for the Russia investigation. I can get there would be some bias that would possibly lead to it, but others would say,
without a doubt.
But others then obviously say the same, and it's repeated. That I think it's more to do with the fact you're a geriatric. You don't belong there anymore.
I think as soon as you transition into the life of appearing in the media, it's just like you don't get it anymore. I'm sorry.
Went from serving your country to serving your own interests. That's what happens when you went from being a government official or working within the CIA to then working for the media. Serving the people, serving yourself.
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay, well then we'll move on to the next one. We'll move on to the Charlottesville white supremacist thing. Paints a picture for us, Trups. Oh no, don't no. Nixon hit list. I need to know about enemy list. Tell me what that is.
Oh, okay. So during the Watergate scandal, they had found that he was making memos of a bunch of people who he did not like and who he planned as political opponents to either smear or whatever. The list was found before he did anything about it. So what he planned to do with it was, is anybody's guess at this point. But it was one of the key aspects during his impeachment trial.
Right. Was he impeached?
So that's why people are drawing. Well, yeah.
Did he resign first?
Okay, so he resigned while it was going on.
That was clever of him. Was anyone else impeached, by the way? Was Clinton impeached?
Clinton was going to be, I think. No, was Clinton actually impeached? Dibula, help me.
Wasn't it for the blow? Was it for the blowjob thing?
Yeah. No, it was because he lied in court and therefore perjured himself.
Oh right, yes. Well then, in that case, I think he did get impeached. Okay, so so Nixon had an enemy list, and you think this might be how it comes across with the Trump thing?
Oh, I know CNN's already mentioned it. Even called up somebody who was working for Nixon's administration at the time to see if they could liken it to the same thing. But what the biggest difference was that Nixon wrote and he made memos and he made tapes. He never did anything. Trump does something and then tells you about it why later.
Right.
Their way, they can't like ever imply that he's doing something or he's not doing it secretive. So he's likely never going to lie in court about it because he already did it.
Okay. That's basic enough. Thank you for filling.
It's like, do you want to be a lot like a sneaky person in it and get caught, or do you want to just be a bombastic, I'm bashing in the door now. By the way, I'm here.
Okay, right. Well, then we'll move on now to the Charlottesville. Was it a 1-year anniversary thing that had a white supremacist rally, or was it a unite? It was a Unite the Right rally, wasn't it?
Yes, it was.
That doesn't mean it's a white supremacist movement, but of course,
kind of.
It doesn't. It's not entirely. Obviously, there are members of it that are, of course, but I don't know. The whole white civil rights thing, I don't consider it white supremacist, but there are people obviously within it that are. Not going to deny that part.
But anyway, painting the picture of this, it was thousands upon thousands of Antifa descended upon Washington, D.C. to confront tens of white supremacists. Just tens. About 25 to 30. That was it. That was all that was there.
I had seen on Twitter a lot of people celebrating this, saying, we'd scared them off the platform, we'd shut them up. It's like, well, no. You threatened them with violence so they didn't turn up. You threatened to hurt them physically when they had every legal right to be there. Your legal right was you were also allowed to be there as well, as was your right. But you were willing to use violence against the supposed fascists, which is inaccurate, because by definitions, you are the fascists. And while you're celebrating them not being there, I tend to agree with, was it Sinatra who said it? He thought it might have been a troll, like they just didn't turn up because they thought that was funnier. I would
honestly say so.
It's all well and good celebrating people not turning up to a rally, but that doesn't mean you've silenced the idea that they represent. You've just stopped them from having a platform. That doesn't mean that they are have less of an impact. They just don't want to get into a fight with you pricks because, well, pricks like you go to prison for using bike chains.
J.C. Wolf says the counter-protesters didn't have a permit. Yes, they also didn't have a permit to punch cops.
I would also point out, actually, there's the quotations around counter-protester. Key to point out, the Unite the Right rally was not a protest. Therefore, the counter-protesters were just the protesters. By definitions, anyway. I'm being a dick. But you are right to put
you're technically correct, and that's the best kind of correct.
You're right to put it in put in quotes for counter protesters, because yeah, fuck them.
But anyway, but it painted a very good picture of everyone else. So this whole thing, everyone's centered on Unite the Right, white supremacy, right? But the actual spectacle, the actual show, was everyone else. It was the counter-protest. It was the demonstrations. And it proved something very, very important. That without someone to attack, they will attack everything around them and even those who protect them. The counter-protesters attacked police. They attacked the media. And that kind of shows you just how much anger they have directed at anyone, not just white supremacists. It's anybody who will oppose them.
Yeah, it's quite sad, really, isn't it?
No, well, kind of. I kind of enjoy seeing all these people showing their true colors, because it cements for everyone else that
it's quite fascinating
they were lying.
Watching these idiots spurging out on Twitter. There are some people who have for years been charitably named the Brain Trust. They are the kind of people that, when their channels are flagged or their videos are taken down, the anti-Brain Trust people, let's call them the anti-Brain Trust, they will step up, call it out, and mirror that person's videos. But when it happens to the anti-Brain Trust, they celebrate it. Now, these are the same people who will hide behind the idea that that there should be consequences for free speech. I'm not totally averse to consequences with context, but if context is being ignored, fuck it, everyone's done. But with these people, they don't seem to grasp that. They don't seem to grasp that eventually it's going to come back on them. They don't understand this. They just think that it's a dangerous idea being put forward, and that's it. And obviously, with what happened last year with someone dying, the white supremacists are being blamed for it. The action of, was it one person? He now represents all of the other people who were peaceful and were assaulted first. And as Dibula put it, counter-protest is their code word for violent rioter. Milkman Dan, I blame the soy. Right. Yes. I do too.
No, it really does.
There was a point to that, but I lost my train of thought.
That's okay. I was listening, and then I had something to say, and then I lost it too. But basically, the thing to kind of look at here is, they're attacking anything around them.
Mm-hmm.
The idea. Oh, now I remember what it was talking about. It was that they were going to come back around at them.
Mm-hmm.
They've employed a destructive system, a system where if someone doesn't agree, destroy it, get rid of it, deplatform it, whatever. This system will degenerate everything. That's the idea. It's kind of like if you have like an infectious disease of your body. At one point, it's going to spread to another place, usually the blood, and it will degenerate everything from there.
Okay. Oh, and I remember what I was going to say as well, by the way. I was going to say that there are no... Where you've heard the idiom, there are no bad tactics, only bad targets. It's the other way round when it comes to Antifa. There are no bad targets, only bad tactics, because they're willing to use what everyone else is not going to use. And that because of that, they look bad because the rallies, who are peaceful and law-abiding, are being assaulted, therefore reinvigorating their position and argument.
I honestly couldn't even say that I agree with the original idiom. There are no bad tactics, only bad targets. Only in war.
I've heard that one used, and I always got it the wrong way round. But I do believe the latter is true of Antifa. Do you think the rally was held during the day, so there wasn't the need for tiki torches? I couldn't say. I didn't even realise they had tiki. Oh god, yeah, I remember now. Fuck it.
Oh yeah, the blood and soil chants.
That did not help anyone. I will say this: are they racist? That's probably yeah. But they are well within their rights to say it. Okay, if you want to disagree with what they have to say, take it to a decent platform and debate them, debunk them, make them look ridiculous, but not, and I don't mean ridiculous, where you assault them with weapons. Because it just looks, a middle class LARPers get the bullet too. Right.
Hey, I have a LARP to go to tomorrow. Fuck off.
Are you middle class?
Upper middle class, yeah.
Snob.
Yes, I am an absolute snob.
Hang on, upper middle class? That means you're rich! Time to fleece the cunt!
Just a software engineer, damn it.
He cannot disclose any more information on that at this time.
I swear to God. No, but it kind of is interesting to tie it back to the John Brennan thing. Like you said, they're well within their right to speak their minds.
Yeah.
Unless that is a call to violence, unless that is divulging secrets of national security, unless, the typical penalties to free speech. Now, I'm all for certain penalties to free speech, but on the individual level, not on a government level.
Yeah, context is key. That's the whole point. Right. Means assessing it and base it on context. I would argue with Antifa, their intentions are nothing to do with discourse. Their intentions are to supposedly defeat fascism by using fascism to defeat it, because they've already lost the actual argument. They lost it. They lost because they refused to debate anyone on an intellectual level. You want proof of that? If anyone's interested, look up someone called Spinosaurus-Kin, formerly Spinosaurus-Kin, now Alternative Facts. This little dipshit and I've known him since I started my channel. Okay, he's busy on Twitter fighting crypto-fascists. Okay, he's got a few good arguments against Braving Ruin and Millennial Woes, but I'll be honest, they're both somewhat irrelevant. And his way of dealing with shit is to be a bitch. He's a perfect example of anything, but although I will say for him, he's too small to use violence, and the only thing he could hide behind if he did is that he looks like a lesbian. Spineless foreskin, yes.
That just makes him more.
He's a perfect example of someone that lost the argument. He has one over Braving Ruin, formerly Edgy Sphinx. He has one on Millennial Woes. But he does not have a legitimate argument against anything else. Like, he's made a fucking conspiracy video about the right taking over YouTube. It's not that. It's just the alt-right got clever and created hundreds of sock accounts to make themselves look bigger than they are. The left, the far ultra-left, the ultra-left won the argument on YouTube. They won it by actually deleting accounts. They escalated it because they couldn't defeat the argument in itself. So they decided, screw it, let's just erase them instead. They are the ones that, if they have an option between having a discussion to prevent something bad from happening, or using, let's say, the extreme, which would be an exterminatus, they would be on the exterminatus because they are far more interested in the end game than trying to exhaust all political and democratic options first. That's what Antifa are, and that's what people like Spinosaurus-Kin are as well.
If you kind of look at it in terms of numbers, the left definitely can mobilize people on the ground much more, but I would have to say that the right has more of a tactful approach to most things.
Yeah.
The reason I say that is because I don't necessarily think that the banning on YouTube, the deplatforming at the moment, that may be their temporary win, but they're going to lose eventually. And the only reason I know that is because, you've got a whole bunch of these lefties out there punching people, but eventually it's going to come to the point where you're going to have to beat somebody on a different level. You can't necessarily resort to violence. It's going to be out of the question, whether that's on the internet or whether that is in a political sphere. They're not going to be able to win.
Okay.
But and the only reason I say that is because, well, what would you say the vast majority of the protesters do for a living?
I would assume they're either the quotes counter protesters. Yes.
Yes.
Right. So they are either unemployed students, and I would argue that's not unemployed, but okay, or they would have a job given to them by their parents. But unemployed is the first one. The first one is the more likely, unemployed. Probably living off some kind of trust fund. Because it has been somewhat proven. The majority are, well, you, actually.
Yeah.
Except you've got a job.
Yeah, but I mean, I was a student at one point too.
So was I, but this shit didn't exist then. And this only really started in 2012 for me. I finished in 2012.
I finished.
I went to university when people would still argue that the safe space on campus was the campus, and that free speech mattered. Now my university is a free speech, no-go zone.
My university is currently battling that, but I think the conservative side is winning. But anyway, so the point that I was getting to was the right has a more varied work arrangement, and it's because the right, being conservative, are usually the ones with money and are concerning with themselves with how their taxes are being spent, how the economy is going to affect their living wages, how their families are going to be able to live if they have investments and those kind of things.
Yes, and of course for that they're bad people. Remember, the
Oh,
ideologues
well,
don't like
yes.
this. Isn't that quite weird? And I noticed it with a lot of people I went to uni with. They were very different to their parents. They rebelled, and a lot of those that came from poorer backgrounds like myself were just well-earthed and grounded, just seeking to have a better life. Whereas the middle-class ones rebelled in the most extreme sense. The parents were somewhat more conservative, and the kids were very liberal. But they got a trust fund, so they didn't give a shit. But they all the while would complain that there were groups being marginalised and they had to do something to fix it while they ate their caviar.
Interesting, actually. I have a personal story actually about this.
Eating
My
caviar?
cousin, he comes. Huh?
What about eating caviar?
No, about middle class and rebelling. My cousin, he comes from a pretty wealthy family. The mom and dad both do very well for themselves, and he
Congratulations.
came from a very sheltered life. Well, when he went off to college, his mom gave him a trust fund of some large amount of money that some students could only wish for, and
Six
he
figures?
blew it. Oh, yeah, yeah, maybe
Yeah.
five zeros.
Yeah, 6 figures.
Yeah. So he blew it all in the first year on cocaine, weed, and booze.
I can counter that one.
And
I can counter
well,
that. Because
the idea was
I
that
went the guy in my first year, he's very conservative, and his family very conservative. He got £350,000 little trust fund, and he decided to be smart. He bought a house with it, a nice little house for himself, so he didn't have to live with people in his second year. He bought a house, paid off his student debt. He set himself up for life.
well done.
Good on him. I mean, I don't care for the trust fund part, but he wasn't a retard. And I'm very jealous because you know what I had to do? I had to work nights to pay my student loans off because I didn't want the debt. I didn't sleep properly.
I'm still doing it.
I didn't sleep for 6 years. I was absolutely fucked by the time I left. And ironically, I couldn't get a job for 4 years after leaving university, but I was working for 6 years while at university.
Then you grew tentacles.
Yeah, and then I evolved into this. Yay me. Donate to my Streamlabs so I can continue this mass oppression.
Tangent over, though. You want to move on to the next?
Yes. Okay, so we've got one more topic, I believe. There will be links in the description to all of this afterwards, but I didn't have time to put these in before. So we're going to be looking at the final thing is going to be about a man called Paul Manafort. Oh no, fuck it. No, we're going to look at something else.
Okay.
I just need to pull it up. So can you read the chat for a second?
Yeah, absolutely. Milkman Dan says, I dare say that most SJWs, middle-class lefty protesters, etc., don't care if speech is no longer free, because Mummy and Daddy will pay for some speech if it costs something anyway. I have to agree for the most part, because they don't actually know what the meaning of either of those things, money or free speech, actually means. Count Dibula says, these kids are scared, and they should be. Capitalism rewards hard work and talent. They have no talent and don't want to work. They're fucked, and they know it. That's very true. Hard work is usually something that is instilled in you by your parents, so I blame them. And talent is something that is usually grown over time by exploring the things that you're good at a young age. So I would have to say that complaining and protesting isn't a good job.
Okay, so there are two things about Jeremy Corbyn we're going to quickly touch on. Firstly, there was a wreath-laying ceremony he attended, Jeremy Corbyn did in 2014, and it was in, where was it, in Tunisia, to honour people killed in a 1985 Israeli airstrike. But there was also a recent one where he laid a wreath, I think it was for people who had actually committed terror attacks or something, which is just terrible to do. I mean, if you want to be a leader of a country, you've got to be as distant from anything controversial as possible. And I know you want to advocate for human rights, I know, and you're brilliant for it. But Jeremy Corbyn, you've got to stop this shit. This is getting fucking ridiculous now. For God's sake, Theresa May's now overtaken you again because of this whole bollocks. And it was further cemented because this week it's been said that he's finally going to make a U-turn on accepting the full definition of anti-Semitism, but he wants to add extra clauses to criticise Israel. Now, I don't take issue with the adding an extra clause to criticise Israel. I think that's fine. I think anything should be up for criticism. I agree. But the fact it's taken this long to put that much pressure on him to finally accept the definition is quite sad. And does no favours when people accuse you of anti-Semitism. And I know I got enough criticism about that when I did a video on it. Almost as much criticism as I did when I said that, taxation wasn't theft, which was hilarious. Thank you to all those that criticised me. I loved it.
I actually had a lot of comments to that video. I kept them to myself because it would have been much more in depth, and I would have had to do research to prove my point. And I thought I didn't feel like it.
It's fine. The taxation is theft thing is hilarious. I don't mind. But this all originated from when Jeremy Corbyn had refused to accept the full International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance's definition. The key clauses that he wants. So the key clauses which say it is anti-Semitic to say Israel is a racist endeavour accuse Jews of dual loyalty and comparing Israel to Nazi Germany. Those are the ones that seem to have been omitted from Labour's position, or Corbyn's position to be more specific. And this had caused quite an outrage. There is a little bit I've got on an article here that says, why is Labour's new code of conduct on anti-Semitism so controversial? The Labour anti-Semitism row erupted again after the party leadership refused to adopt the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance's definition. The party's code explicitly endorses the IHRA definition, but it omits 4 examples from the list, which is accusing Jewish people of being more loyal to Israel than their home country. The racist endeavour. Yeah. The racist endeavour one is that's a dangerous one to ignore. That really is. I think that's quite dangerous. Requiring higher standards of behaviour from Israel than other nations.
That's definitely an accurate fucking statement. They don't give a shit about what Saudi Arabia does, crucifying.
Their version of crucifixion isn't. That's not their version of crucifixion. Isn't the same one we think it is, though, is it? Don't they just remove the head and do stuff with that?
Yeah, but that's still desecrating a body.
Oh no! I'm just saying. Definitely the term of crucifixion, what we think and what Saudi think it is.
Yeah, but
it's absolutely fucked up, though. I agree. I just
fucking Israel defends their country, and oh my god, everything's awful.
Yeah, and the final one is comparing contemporary Israeli policies to those of the Nazis. I'm not familiar with Nazi policy, so I can't comment on that.
Depends on which part of the war. I mean, at the first point, fucking Hitler was all fine and dandy with Catholics up until a certain point that he then established an Orthodox Nazi church, which then ran all the Catholics out of Germany. So, I mean, depends on which part you're talking about.
Yeah, well, this whole anti-Semitism thing has been exacerbated by someone called Len McCluskey, who, as tactful as he is, he decided to blame Jewish leaders and Blairite MPs for exploiting the anti-Semitism row. That, the way it was, it's not a good look for anyone. It's bad. And we're going to move on now, fuck it. We've got one more topic to cover, and it's about Paul Manafort.
Yeah.
So who's Paul Manafort, Trups?
Paul Manafort was an advisor to the Trump campaign. And basically he's been on trial for bank and tax fraud charges, and I don't know if they actually went with the charge of failing to file as a interested foreign power as well, or interested foreign agent. He did business with Russians as well.
Oh really?
but I don't think they're bringing up charges on that. But the jurors began deliberating today, which means the actual trial part is over, and now they're talking with one another.
So what happens if there is a guilty verdict?
Paul Manafort will probably go to jail for the rest of his life, and it will beg the question how Hillary Clinton's advisor, who did the same thing for her and almost the exact same way, isn't on trial.
Well, that just further cements the belief that the system is against Trump, really, doesn't it? It just reinvigorates that argument.
Yeah, it would be the Podesta brothers on the Clinton side and Manafort on Trump's side. But it's interesting that the Russia collusion investigation directly ties into the Manafort trial, because Paul Manafort would have done business with Russia, but then so did the Podesta brothers. So did they or did they not do economic or financial dealings with Russians? Well, kind of. But that was because that's what happens.
Yeah.
Like, it may have been I honestly I'm not quite sure of the evidence brought forward, except for occasional like comments here and there about who he called, and I think one of the evidence brought against him was he had a nice couch. I shit you not. It was because he was, changing the money into assets.
Right.
But the whole thing that Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, had sold 20% of the American uranium production to Russia, for uranium.
Yeah, I think this will certainly raise the question that if it's a guilty verdict, it would only be right and just if the same thing now happened to Clinton's campaign, whoever it was. Oh, and this is Paul Manafort, people. If you don't know who he is, I didn't know who he was. He looks like an old Marty McFly.
He looks like a man who's been doing his job for far too long.
Yeah. This article is 5 key points that could sway the jury in the trial and determine his fate. The first one is credibility of Rick Gates. He's a former partner to Manafort and government star witness.
Yeah, he threw Manafort under the bus, and they're using him as the whistleblower, in a manner of speaking.
It's when it says former partner, are we talking relationship or business?
Business.
Right, I had to be sure. I did wonder. We've got Gates here admitting to stealing money from Manafort and falsifying documents for him. He even admitted some of the money was used to quietly finance a secret relationship with a mistress in London. Nice. Embezzlement. Theft and embezzlement, I guess. Theft and embezzlement? Yeah.
And hookers, maybe?
Sorry?
And hookers, maybe?
Why not? Manafort's attorneys painted Gates as the true villain and aimed to discredit his testimony by discrediting his character. Well, character assassination works so well, doesn't it?
In court, it does. If you are not a credible witness.
If there's a chance of discrediting someone, the quote I have highlighted would certainly help that. Because he's admitted to stealing the money and admitted to using it to finance relationships. He is already a criminal. And testimonies of criminals aren't paid that much attention to. The quick pace of the trial...
Unless you're Frank Abernathy.
Well, yes. You've got here quick pace of the trial. This is oddly reminiscent of the Tommy Robinson stuff. If it's gone as fast, well, not as fast as his, but if it's gone too fast for evidence to not truly be considered or displayed and stuff, then there's an argument.
The judge thinks it's bullshit. At least the one for the Mueller investigation.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure, it's the same Judge Ellis. He's so tired of listening to this shit. So you already have a judge who's not on your side. So they really have to try hard to get any kind of thing out of the judge.
So hang on, which side is the judge on?
Oh, he's on Trump's side.
Because this is all bollocks.
Yeah, because it's bullshit, and he knows it, and he knows that the prosecution is bullshitting him.
Right. So the third will be no case by defence. They didn't call a single witness or offer any evidence to vouch for him. Vouch.
Vouch? Isn't that VOUCH?
Yep. VOUGE here. That might be a new word. Or a word that... And maybe it's the correct word, and I just don't know it. Vogue. Vouge. Yep.
Vogue spelled wrong.
No evidence to vouch for him. Because I figured it'd be like rouge.
Yeah, right.
You're welcome, everyone. Vouge.
Yeah.
Okay, that's quite a dangerous tactic. To not call witnesses or offer any evidence. That is dangerous. He's putting all the pressure on the prosecution to do their job.
Well, that's exactly the point. You are innocent until proven guilty, and it's very hard to prove a negative. For example, prove to me God doesn't exist.
You know, I keep forgetting that we live under that system. I've gotten so used to guilty before innocent.
It's a very interesting point, though. It's very hard to prove a negative. So how can he prove that he didn't do it? The prosecution has the burden of proof, as we call it, and it's their job to do it. So whether or not the defense thought that they brought up anything substantial, well, they don't have to say anything. All they have to do is cross-examine the witnesses.
Right. Right, so the fourth one, judge chastising prosecutors. Ellis was picking on prosecutors and their strategy before the trial even started. So, quote, you don't really care about Mr. Manafort's bank fraud. What you really care about is what information Mr. Manafort could give you that would reflect on Mr. Trump or lead to his prosecution or impeachment. The vernacular is to sing. Oh dear.
No, he spits straight fire. I fucking love him.
This judge does not hold back. Okay. Okay. And
he's holding a position of power over the prosecutors. Yeah. So
it's a courtroom sketch.
He has all the power in the world.
There's one here which has a bunch of people in it. Yeah. Okay. So the final one is public opinion of Mueller and the FBI. So while Manafort's trial does not directly deal with his role as Trump's campaign manager, the president's shadow has covered this case from the beginning. The trial is the first brought by special counsel Robert Mueller in his investigation into Russian meddling in the 2016 election, and is widely thought to be an important test for him and his team. But could the public trust in the FBI and in Mueller bleed into the jury's decision-making? Tweets from the president mixed with constant attacks from Republican leadership and Fox News has altered how the public views the FBI and Mueller. Right. There's a quote here. There's always a risk of this in any case, but in today's political climate, there's a much bigger risk here. He added, in a perfect world, this jury would see this case narrowly, stripped down to a man accused of bank fraud and business fraud, and leave out all the politics and the large picture of who he is and what all of this could mean. If they just treat it as that case of bank fraud and business fraud, yeah, okay, bye-bye, go to prison, have fun, see you later, be a bitch. But if they want him to sing, then yeah, they're gonna lean on him until they get what they want, whether it be true or not.
Except the judge isn't giving them the time of day for it, because I mean, technically they could have drawn out this case for a while, but the judge isn't giving them the leeway that, let's say, the Dankula trial did, where they could keep BSing and passing on over and over again, because every time you want to, like, petition the court to extend the trial, you have to let the judge has to approve that, and fuck that, he ain't doing it.
I see a very long list of messages from someone called Ben here. Oh,
yeah,
okay, I'll read it. Capitalism is unsustainable and will doom this planet to ruin. The pursuit of profit has been a violent one, whether it's colonialism, slavery, or the environmental destruction of the whole planet. 2020, Ben. Cthulhu 2020. I will destroy it anyway. You're welcome.
Your use of emojis is slightly concerning.
Oh, I don't mind. I like that Tiger Lily timed you out, though. That's funny. And I don't really care about capitalism. I just like owning my own stuff.
I feel like this is a copy pasta.
It's quite possible with the sheer volume that it's all copy-pasted.
Yeah, and he's typed. It would be typed way too fast. I'm watching the live chat as opposed to top chat.
Okay, well, I'm going to do my job for a second. There we go.
Okay, do that.
Wait, hang on a second. How's that one still there? I'll fix it. It's not rude. I'm being fair. You're using 2 accounts. Anyway, with regards to this case, what do you believe the final verdict will be?
It's very hard to say, because to find a jury that is impartial is very, very difficult. You would have to find somebody who didn't know anything about this case, didn't hold any opinions. Like, you'd have to find 12 independent centrists to hear this case. So honestly, I don't know. I want to say that Manafort probably will not be found guilty on all charges. He might be found guilty on some charges, but I can't see that. I can't see that. I think going too well if he goes guilty, because then that's going to establish the precedent that all right, Nesta brothers are next.
Okay.
But oh wait, that's our guys. Those are in our corner. We can't do that. What do you want to do?
Right. Yeah. I would also agree with the chat. We are here where it says even centrists have biases. I agree. And just to be clear here, Ben, I know you wrote lots of messages, copy pasted. I only timed you out because you essentially spammed stuff about anti-capitalism and free college. You were just spamming stuff that was not relevant to the discussion. And I want to make this quite clear. Yeah, I have enough issues staying on topic as it is, Ben. But for the most part on these streams, the chat manages to follow me and make good contributions. Spamming anti-capitalist rhetoric does nothing for the discussion at all, and was not relevant to any of the topics we covered today. So, before we finish, because we are finished, is there anything you'd like to shill before I end the stream?
So, this week I didn't do a video, but I'm thinking about doing a live stream about my Food for Thought series next week. And that's basically where I talk about morals and ethics that people hold, or societal norms, and why we necessarily do or do not necessarily go along with them. So I will formally extend the invitation to you, Omegon, if you would like to join me for that stream.
Yeah, sure. If I'm about, of course I will. I've linked Trup's channel in the description. Please consider subscribing. So thank you all very much for joining us, and have a lovely evening.